IET 42 here in Birmingham, and we're just glad to have you here tonight as a part of the Changing the Game Awards dinner. Now, I'm proud to be here and see many wonderful people like you who will support a mission of the ALS Association of Alabama. And more importantly, I'm amazed to see the show of support for the two amazing gentlemen we'll be honoring tonight. It'll be Kevin Turner and Frank Orgel. Right now, I'd like to invite Senior Minister Doug Dortch from Mountain Brook Baptist Church. He'll come up here and give us the invocation. And after the invocation, please enjoy your dinner, company at your table, and our program will begin shortly.
Pray with me, please. Our Father and our God, who watches over us and provides us with grace that is sufficient for our every need, we thank you for the gift of life and for the privilege that is ours to share together in the fight against every threat that would rob us of the life more abundant to which you have called us. We gather this evening to pray for those who have dedicated themselves to changing the game with respect to ALS. We ask, O God, that you would bless them in all of their labors. We ask as well that you would help each and every one of us to see ourselves as teammates in this contest, that we might work together in order to achieve a victory against this most debilitating of diseases. And so we lift up this evening those who give, and we pray that you would bless those who care, and we ask your favor on those who struggle, and we remember those who do what they can to treat those who are struggling. We pray your blessings upon every aspect of this evening. We ask that you bless our food and our fellowship, that we might find the strength to face the good future that we believe you have for us, and to face it with courage and with hope. And we pray all of this in your name and for our sakes. Amen.
Good evening. I hope everyone is enjoying this delicious meal and the wine, which was generously donated to us by Holman Ranch. Please continue to enjoy your dinner as we begin our program. My name is Cassie Barber, and I am honored to be the Executive Director of the ALS Association Alabama Chapter. Our chapter was founded in December of 2004, and what we do is create awareness of ALS, advocate on behalf of ALS patients, and provide them and their families with a wide range of services all across the state. Since our inception, we have actively served 633 people living with ALS and their families in 63 out of the 67 Alabama counties. All ALS Association services are offered to people who register with our chapter, regardless of where they live, and at no cost to the family. No one seeking our services is turned away. We are currently serving nearly 200 Alabamians and a handful of people from neighboring states, too. But we know there are others who are not yet connected with our chapter who need our help. This means we have a lot more work to do to identify and register those who we have not yet touched. ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, is a progressive, always fatal, neuromuscular disease that attacks adults in the prime of their lives. There is no known cause or cure. But in the wake of the Ice Bucket Challenge, which brought millions of research dollars to the National ALS Association, we have hope. In the 7 months since the Ice Bucket Challenge soaked our nation, the ALS Association has made considerable progress in delivering and executing strategies to put this incredible financial support to immediate use in the fight against ALS. Last fall, the association announced $21.7 million in initial commitments to ignite 6 projects, including 4 collaborative research initiatives to build understanding of the disease, target new therapies, expedite clinical trials, and make DNA and RNA sequencing data available to the entire ALS worldwide research community. It can take upwards of $1 to $2 billion to develop a single effective treatment. So it's critical that we turn the Ice Bucket moment into an ALS movement. Thank you. We are so grateful to all of you for being here tonight to help us and support us as we work to find a cure for people here in Alabama who are suffering with ALS. We've got to find the cause, and then we're going to find the cure. Before we go any further this evening, I want to extend a very special thank you to our gold sponsor, Promobile, and to all of our sponsors this evening who made this night possible. We'd also like to thank our partners at the Kevin Turner Foundation who worked side by side with us on this event. Who's here from the Turner Foundation? Like to, yes, if you want to stand up and take a bow, we are so grateful to have you here. And please allow me to take another moment to thank the other members of the committee who worked so hard to make this evening so terrific. Where are you? Please stand. And we also have with us a few members of the ALS Association Board of Trustees. If you could stand, please, and be recognized. We thank you so much for your support. And last, but certainly not least, the members of the ALS Association staff who are with us tonight. Thank you. Now, it's my privilege to introduce a young man who, from the age of 13, has spent his young life challenging ALS. Stuart Carrington was only 6 years old when he lost his father, Dick Carrington, to ALS. At 13, he planned to honor his father at a celebrity golf tournament, a sport that his dad truly loved. The challenge? Raise the $10,000 entry fee. Well, Stuart not only took on that challenge, he exceeded it by raising a total of $20,000, which so impressed the event organizers that they arranged to have the young man sit at the head table, right in between Tom Watson and our guest speaker tonight, John Feinstein. Can you believe it? They are enjoying a reunion tonight that was 11 years in the making. Since that time, Stuart has been very involved with the ALS Association in Georgia, New York, and Virginia. He helped his two older brothers plan the Iron Horse Party in New York, a fundraiser that in 3 years has donated nearly $200,000 to ALS research and care. Last year, this event sold out within the first 20 minutes of online ticket sales. Stuart is also a founder of the Quiet Hero Party, a young professionals black tie event, which raised money for the ALS Association of Georgia. Its inaugural event took place just last month and was attended by close to 900 people and raised almost $100,000. And last year, Stuart and the Carrington family were awarded the Spirit Award at the 14th annual MDA's Wings Over Wall Street. Stuart graduated from the University of Georgia, and he currently resides in Atlanta. Stuart, won't you come up here with me, please?
Hi, how are y'all doing? So I just asked my mom, and it's pretty awesome. There's 450 of us here tonight, all fighting the same cause. It's pretty spectacular. I was, first of all, Casey, thank you so much. Let me find my little spot here. Mr. Feinstein, it's great to see you again. It's a pretty special story. As Casey mentioned, I was only 6 years old when my dad passed away. I was 1 year old when he was diagnosed with the illness of ALS. Back then, you really weren't given you weren't given much hope, you weren't given a long lifespan. And we battled hard, and he lived for 5 years. And I remember probably, I guess I was in 8th grade, 7th grade, and I looked online, and we were going through different things. My mom was looking for a book, and it was something about Tom Watson golf tournament, Bethesda, Maryland. My mom was in the kitchen, probably cooking some Stouffer's mac and cheese, which was my favorite at the time. And I was like, I want to play golf, and I want to play in this event. So we raised a little bit of money, and we were able to do it, and it was awesome. Mr. Feinstein, it's great to see you again. I'm glad we're fighting the good fight. It's great to see you still doing the same thing, and I hope in 10 years we're here celebrating a cure for this terrible disease. It's so devastating, and I hope we can do that. to Frank, to Kevin, to your family, I know this is so difficult. It's really is tough. But I'm living proof, you know, you can survive this disease. I understand that it's, you know, this disease is terrible. I consider it just nasty. It's brutal. It is so difficult. And you're not the only victims. The whole unit, the family unit is the victim. And it kind of rips you apart. But I am living proof. My mother, my stepdad, my two older brothers, you will survive and you will get through this. I promise you. To all of you here tonight, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Seriously, I hope y'all are having a good time. I know y'all all spent a lot of money, but that's not enough. Like Casey said, the Ice Bucket Challenge is fabulous. I was actually with a friend a week ago who was part of it. We've raised a ton of money, but it's not enough. We raised a ton of awareness. I was with a doctor from Emory, and we were talking. We raised millions and hundreds of millions of dollars through the Ice Bucket Challenge. However, one nurse costs $10,000 to support a family. That is, millions of dollars is not enough, so please help us all fight this. Give more money. I know it's tough, but believe me, you're helping out not just a person, but a whole family, as you can see. So it's great to see Mr. Feinstein again. Although he is a Duke grad, I'm a big UVA basketball fan, but it's good to hear that he likes Tony Bennett. So Mr. Feinstein began his career at the Washington Post as a sports intern and night police reporter. He also appeared on the Tony Kornheiser show, who now does PTI with Mike Wilbon. Mike Wilbon is also a big ALS supporter, who I also met that week at Woodmont Country Club with Mr. Feinstein. You'll also probably see John on the Golf Channel often. As you can know, he's written 2 top best-selling nonfiction sports books. In 1986, he published his first book, A Season on the Brink, which recounts the 1985-1986 season of the Indiana basketball team and its coach, Bob Knight. In 1995, he published the bestseller, A Good Walk Spoiled, which documents a year inside the life of the PGA Tour. It's a great read. I am a huge golfer. I highly recommend it. Feinstein's book, Caddy for Life, the Bruce Edwards story, was released in 2004. It's about the life and final days of Tom Watson's caddy, Bruce Edwards, who was diagnosed with ALS in 2010. A Caddy for Life was produced in the documentary format in the Golf Channel recently. Mr. Feinstein won the DC Writer of the Year Award in 1985, the Best Stories Award in 1982, 1985, 1986, and was inducted in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame as the Kurt Gowdy Award winner for journalism in 2013. John Feinstein was a columnist for the Washington Post, Golf World, Golf Digest, and he's also a daily radio show on the CBS Sports Network and is a contributor to the Golf Channel and an analyst for CBS Sports Television. Please welcome John Feinstein. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stuart. I don't know if you've gotten a lot taller since we last saw each other, or I've gotten a lot shorter. But the height difference has changed a lot since that dinner in 2003 in Bethesda. A lot of people have come up to me tonight and thanked me for being here. And that's backwards. I want to thank all of you for being here, because what you're doing, as Stuart said, is so important. And I hate to, Stuart's right, we cannot do enough, because I'm just going to adjust what Stuart said a little bit. My goal is to someday speak at the last ALS research dinner. That's where we're trying to go. And it's very, very, very hard to get there. And we're all inspired by men like Coach Turner and Coach Orgel and what they're going through, and as Stuart points out, what their families are going through. because that's very much a part of it. When I wrote Caddy for Life about Bruce Edwards, I got to be very close with everybody in Bruce's family, and to this day, we're still very close. In fact, I just spent some time with his dad in Vero Beach, Florida, a couple weeks ago, and Tom Watson and I started, much like you all have started this event, we started a charity golf tournament back in 2005 that we've held for the last 10 years, and we've been fortunate enough to raise close to $10 million in that time. And unfortunately, as Stuart says, it's not nearly enough, because this is the toughest disease we have ever battled. And when I say we're not doing the work. The scientists are doing the work of battling the disease. The rest of us are just trying to come up with the money to help the scientists along and to help along the people who need help. But these it was 74 years ago that Lou Gehrig died, and the disease was named for him. And here we are, and we're still not close to a cure. We've made progress. There are different scientists have different theories, but we're still fighting. And I just want to thank all of you for being a part of this fight tonight. And you should all give yourselves a round of applause. We're going to applaud for a lot of people here. Give yourselves a round of applause. It's great. March Madness is underway. Auburn started football practice on Tuesday, and Alabama starts tomorrow. In Alabama, that's March Madness, right? And for those of you not keeping score, it's 261 days till the Iron Bowl. And I know you're all fired up about it, right? I know where I am. I was in North Carolina yesterday. Yesterday, March Madness was basketball. Today, I'm going to throw in a little bit of football. I was actually very fortunate, very early in my career at the Washington Post, to interview Coach Bryant. I was 22 years old, just out of college, and I was sent to cover a Notre Dame-Alabama game. And I flew in to Birmingham, drove to Tuscaloosa, and I was granted an audience with Coach Bryant. And he said all the usual things that he said to reporters. Probably was wondering how in the world I was able to rent a car. But I'll never forget, and I'm sure you all have heard this story in various forms, but I asked him, I said, Coach, what are you going to do when you stop coaching football? And he said, I'll probably go straight to the cemetery. I'm not saying that as a joke, because as I'm sure most of you know, he died 4 weeks after he stopped coaching. He was only 69, right, Gene? 69. He wasn't even 70. And that's how much of his life was wrapped up in coaching. He kind of knew somehow. But that day, that evening, when we finished the interview, he was doing his weekly radio show. And I said, Coach, is it all right if I just kind of hang out while you do your radio show? And I know he wanted to say no. But he said, well, yeah, okay, fine, if you want to. And I said, he did it in his office. And he was great. An 11-year-old boy called in and said, Coach Bryant, I want to play for you someday. He said, how old are you? He said, I'm 11. He said, well, you better get to college when you're about 14. And he charmed everybody. And then when he was done with the radio show, I said, could I just ask you a few more questions based on what you just said during the radio show? And he looked at me and said, son, what are you doing, writing a book? And I thought, boy, if you could hang out with Bear Bryant or somebody like him for a year, you could have a great book. You wouldn't even have to ask questions. Just be there. So a few years later, I got the notion that maybe I could get Bob Knight to give me that kind of access for a year, and he did. And I wrote a book, as Stuart mentioned, called A Season on the Brink, my first book. And Coach Knight wasn't very happy with the book. And it wasn't anything that I particularly said, but he was unhappy that I used his favorite word on a number of occasions. I used about 1 out of every 100 that he said, but I did use the word. It rhymes with luck and duck, in case you're wondering. And so at one point, he told one reporter that I was a pimp, and he told another reporter that I was a whore. And couple months later, I was interviewed about the book on NBC by Ahmad Rashad. By then, the book had become a #1 bestseller, and everybody was saying there'd never been a book like this, an outsider writing from the inside, and it was wonderful for me. But Ahmad Rashad interviewed me, and he said, Coach Knight, John has called you a pimp, and he's called you a whore. How do you respond? I said, well, I wish he'd make up his mind so I'd know how to dress in the morning. This is why my wife insists on putting out my clothes when I'm going somewhere to speak. Now, 8 years after the book came out, Knight and I still hadn't spoken to one another. But I had been able, thanks to the book, to go on and continue writing books. And I was covering a basketball tournament in Hawaii because somebody has to do it, right? And I was with Gary Williams, the Maryland basketball coach at the time, who's now in the Hall of Fame. And we're walking into the hotel, and here comes Knight with a friend of his. And we're walking like this, and Gary goes, oh boy, here we go. And we walk up, and Bob acted like we had last talked the day before. Hey, John, how you doing? Gary, good to see you. Team's playing well. Bob said to me, I heard you became a dad. How's it going? And, so we chatted for a few minutes. And when they walked away, their way, we walked ours, Gary looked at me and he said, after all the things he's called you, why would you speak to him? I said, because he built my house. Now, I was asked earlier this evening about the work that Kevin has done since he was diagnosed. And I drew an analogy to Jim Valvano, who I'm sure many of you remember. It's hard to believe he's been gone for 21 years. But when Jim was diagnosed with cancer, and it was stage 4, and he knew his time was limited, he spent the last year of his life organizing the V Foundation and lining up people like Mike Krzyzewski and Dean Smith and other friends of his to make the organization work and grow, even after he was gone. The V Foundation to this day has raised more than $100 million for cancer research. And the kind of work that Kevin is doing is evidence of what you can do, even when you get hit in the face with something you don't deserve. And when that happens, you can do one of two things. You could just say, I'm done, I'm just going to give up. Or you can do what Jim did and what Kevin's done. And that's what makes people like them special. Now, one of the other things that made Jim Valvano special was he was one of the funnier human beings I ever met in my life. And his stories were so good that even if you weren't sure they were completely true, you kind of wanted to believe them. I'll give you an example. When he first got to North Carolina State as the basketball coach, of course, Dean Smith was dominant. I mean, he had Michael Jordan, he had Sam Perkins, he had James Worthy. I mean, he was a godlike figure. And the first year Jim was there, Carolina beats NC State twice by about 30 points each time. And after the second game, an old State alumnus walks up to Jim and he goes, now, Coach, I know you're a Yankee. Jim was from New York. And you don't understand about our rivalries down here, but we cannot be losing in North Carolina this way. And Valvano says, no, I get it. I know all about the rivalry. Trust me, next year we're going to do a lot better against the Tar Heels. And the alum shakes his head. He says, Coach, you're not really understanding me. If you don't beat Carolina next year, we're going to kill your dog. And Jim says, I get the sentiment. I really do. I don't have a dog, but I do understand where you're coming from. Trust me. So the next day, Jim gets up. He goes to the front step. Coach Stallings and I were talking about how people of our generation do actually still read newspapers. And he goes to the front step to get his newspaper and opens up the door, and there's a basket on the front step. And he looks at it, and there's a blanket. So he pulls the blanket back, and there's the cutest puppy you've ever seen in your life. And around the puppy's neck is a note, and it says, don't get too attached. Now, I don't know if that story's true, but it's funny. Now, one I do know is true because it was told to me by the other guy. Years ago, great referee, basketball referee named Hank Nichols, he's now in the Basketball Hall of Fame, is running down the court and he hears Valvano calling his name. And he turns around and he says, Jimmy, what is it? He says, Hank, can you give me a technical foul for what I'm thinking? He says, no, Jimmy, I can't tee you up for what you're thinking. He said, good, in that case, I think you stink. Nichols said it was such a good line, he couldn't tee him up. I have been very fortunate through the years to write books on a lot of different subjects. I've done a number of golf books, a number of basketball books, football books. I did a book on the Army-Navy football rivalry 20 years ago, which was an extraordinary experience for me because to play football at Army or Navy, you have to be different. It's different than playing at Alabama or Auburn or anywhere in the country that's a civilian school. Notice I didn't say Duke because they don't really play football at Duke. They just put a team on the field. They've gotten better. All my Duke friends say, oh, we're much better, we're much better. The fact is, the only football game that's been sold out in the last 15 years at Duke was when Alabama played there because all the Alabama fans bought the tickets. I've always said the most important fall sport at Duke is basketball recruiting. But I wrote a book on the Army-Navy football rivalry, and as I said, the young men I met at both schools were extraordinary people. I'm still close to many of them. But and what I did in writing the book, I didn't just go to games and practices. I wanted to go through entire days with cadets and entire days with midshipmen, see what their lives were like. And one morning I was at Army, and I was spending the day with Jim Cantaloupe, who was the captain, defensive captain of the team at the time. And we got up, 6 o'clock, reveille. I did not do the morning push-ups. We went to breakfast, I did that. Then we went to Jim's first period class. He didn't have a second period class, so we came back to his room. And Jim's roommate, Kevin Norman, was in the room. Kevin was a punter on the Army team. And several years later, Kevin was killed overseas. He was piloting a plane, and something went wrong with the engine, and the plane was going to crash in a very populated area. And somehow Kevin kept the plane afloat. He knew he was going to die, but he kept the plane afloat long enough so that he crashed it in the middle of a field, so that only he and his co-pilot died. No civilians died. And when Jim called me to tell me that Kevin had been killed, I said the usual cliche line about, well, he died a hero because he died fighting for his country. And Jim said to me, I want you all to think about this for a minute. He said, Kevin wasn't a hero because he died fighting for his country. Kevin was a hero because he was willing to die fighting for his country. And if you watch the Army-Navy football game on television, and I urge you to do it, and I urge you to put it on your bucket list to go if you can, and you see when they play the national anthem, and they show the shots of the 4,000 cadets and the 4,000 midshipmen all like this, you should remember that every one of them has volunteered to die for his or her country if he or she has to. Those are heroes, and we need to remember that. And I always try to remember that when I go to that game every year, and I haven't missed it since I did that book. But going back for a moment to basketball, I'll finish the football story in a moment. But as I mentioned, Dean Smith was a godlike figure in North Carolina, and I think most of you know he just passed away recently. And Dean I went to Duke. He coached in North Carolina. There was no one in sports I ever admired more than Dean Smith. And one of the reasons I admired him was because of something I learned when I was doing a story on him back in 1981. Again, I was still a young reporter at the Post, and I convinced him to give me time for a profile. He never wanted anybody to write about him. He would always say, write about the players, write about the players. When they came to him to tell him they were going to name the basketball arena in his name in 1986, he said it should be named for the players. They said, Dean, that would be kind of an unwieldy name. So they insisted that they name it the Dean E. Smith Center. But while I was researching this piece, I spoke to his minister, Robert Seymour, at the Binkley Baptist Church in Chapel Hill. And Reverend Seymour told me that in 1958, when Dean first arrived in Chapel Hill as an assistant coach to Frank McGuire, he was shocked to see that the restaurants in Chapel Hill were still segregated. Dean's father had been the first coach to win a state championship in Kansas with an integrated basketball team. And he said to his minister, we need to do something about this. And they came up with an idea that Dean and an African-American member of the church would walk into a segregated restaurant in Chapel Hill and sit down and dare the management not to serve them. Now, he was an assistant coach, not a star. He wasn't Dean Smith. He could have been arrested. He could have been fired for causing trouble. He walked into the restaurant. It was a restaurant where they knew people from from the school, and the management served them. And that was the beginning of desegregation in Chapel Hill. And when Reverend Seymour told me this story, I went back and I asked Dean, I said, can you tell me more about that? Tell me what it was like that night. Were you scared? Were you nervous? How did the evening play out? And he said, who told you that story? And I said, Reverend Seymour. He said, I wish he hadn't told you that. I said, Dean, you should be proud of doing something like that. And he looked at me, he said, 18 words I've never forgotten. He said, you should never be proud of doing the right thing in life. You should just do the right thing. And I know for a fact that I don't live up to that. Every time I clean the kitchen, I ask my wife for a pat on the back. I deserve it. But just think, if you live your life that way, if you're not always looking around for somebody to give you credit for doing something right, how much better the world would be. I remember, thank you. I remember when I went to do the book on night, Jim Valvano was not a big fan of nights. He said, you know, there are some of us who go to visit sick kids in hospitals who don't take camera crews with us when we do it. And that's true. There are some people who do that. There are others who take a camera crew. Personally, I don't really care as long as you do it. But some people don't need the pat on the back. I'll tell you one more story that relates to Dean Smith. When Mike Krzyzewski first got to Duke, he and Valvano got to Duke and NC State the same week. And he was out recruiting a kid in California named Mark Akers. And as Coach Dye can tell you, as Coach Stallings can tell you, as any coach can tell you, there are some nights when you're on a home visit, you know it's not going well. You're not getting the kid. But you have to go through the ritual. So Krzyzewski's talking about the school and the academics and the quality of the ACC, and he finally looks at Mark Akers' mother, who hasn't said a word all night. And he says, Mrs. Akers, is there anything at all I can tell you about Duke? And she says, no, I don't need to ask any questions at all, because the only thing that's important is that Mark go to college somewhere where he'll be close to God. And Krzyzewski said, well, if he comes to Duke, God will be 10 miles down the road in Chapel Hill, so you might want to think about it. He went to Oral Roberts. I'm often asked, what sport do I like to cover the most? And it's a hard call for me. I love being at college football Saturdays. I love walking into gyms on winter nights for college basketball. Frankly, I enjoy January and February more than the Final Four, because the Final Four is in a football stadium, for crying out loud. The NCAA always says, well, we just want more people to have the experience. And my answer is, fine, let them all in free then, if that's all you're trying to do, instead of charging all the money they charge. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. But, and I love covering golf. I love the aesthetics of it. I love watching guys do something really well that I can't do really well. There are quite a few of those things. But the sport I liked covering least, even though I loved the sport itself, was tennis. And the reason for that is simple. The most spoiled, arrogant group of human beings on earth are professional tennis players. Okay? And I'm holding back here because it's a polite audience. When I wrote a book called Hard Courts about life on the tennis tour about 23 years ago now. And Andre Agassi was a rising young star at the time. And he had an entourage. If we could get the entourage, Andre's entourage, to be here tonight, we would double the money that we made. He had, among others, his coach, his racket stringer, his masseuse, his coach's assistant, his religious guru, who he fired once after losing a match, his agent, his agent's assistant, and his brother, who as far as I could see was paid to be his brother. And one night, Andre and the entourage flew into Cincinnati. How many of you have been to the airport in Cincinnati? Probably a few of you at least, right? You know it's across the river in Covington, Kentucky. And it's 11:30 at night, and Andre gets off the plane, and there's a woman who had been sent by the tournament to get them to the hotel and get them set up. I'm sure she brought a very, very big car. And he goes over and he says, look, you have got to get security out here for me right now, because if you don't, I'm going to be mobbed by all my fans going through this airport. And the woman looks at Andre and she says, Andre, it's 11:30 at night. We're in Kentucky. Unless you've been on hee-haw lately, no one here is going to mob you. I almost dedicated the tennis book to that woman, I swear to God. So back to, we're going to get back to the room at West Point before I'm done, I promise. But before I do, I want to talk about people who overcome, which is what this dinner is about. It's about people who are afflicted with this horrible disease and what they overcome. And it's about all of us as a group trying to overcome, as Tom Watson calls it, this damn disease. And I'm often asked of all the athletes and coaches I've had the chance to meet through the years, who do you admire the most? Is it Michael Jordan? Is it Dean Smith, who's very, very high on the list? Mike Krzyzewski, Tiger Woods? No. The late Tiger Woods. We'll see. But the athlete, and my answer always is Chris Spittler. And I'm betting there's no one in this room who's ever heard of Chris Spittler, except me. And the reason I say Chris Spittler is this. Chris Spittler, when he played basketball in high school in Buffalo, New York, averaged 7 points a game as a senior. He was recruited by no one. One Division III coach came to see him play and said, Chris, I made a mistake. You're not good enough to play for us. So he went to Holy Cross on an academic scholarship, and he played JV ball as a freshman. And at the end of his freshman season, he went into Bill Rayner, who was Holy Cross's coach at the time, and he said, Coach, I'd like to try out for the varsity next year. And Bill Rayner said, Chris, you're welcome to try out. Anybody can try out, but I've seen you play. You can't make the team. He said, that's okay, I'd like to try out anyway. So the following September, he goes to tryouts, and when they're over, Bill Rayner calls him into his office, and he says, Chris, I'm putting you on the team. I'm putting you on the team because I love your attitude, I love your hustle, I love your grade point average, because at the end of the bench, you want kids with the higher GPAs who can up the team average. But I have to tell you one thing. If you ever find yourself in a game, please remove yourself immediately. Someone has made a terrible mistake. You are the 12th man on a 12-man team. Coach, that's fine. I just want to be part of the team. So they're in the Patriot League. I was writing a book that year on Patriot League basketball about kids who play for the love of the game. And they go to play at Colgate. Have any of you ever been to Colgate? No, good for you. The way you get to Colgate is you drive to the end of the earth, you turn right, you go about 100 more miles, and when it starts snowing, you're getting close in July. So they're on a bus trip back from Colgate after losing up there, and Chris happens to pick up a basketball magazine, and he's reading a story, and it ranks the 31 Division I basketball conferences, and the Patriot League is ranked 31st. And he thinks to himself, let me see if I have this straight. I am the worst player on the worst team, because Holy Cross was in last place, in the worst conference in Division. I am the worst Division I basketball player in America. And he was so impressed with himself, he used it as a pickup line. He'd go up to a girl at a party and say, hey, you know who I am? She'd go, yeah, you're a loser hitting on me. Yes, I am, but not just any loser. Now, sadly, he lost that status because toward the end of the season, Bill Rayner got so desperate he put Chris in the starting lineup. And he started a game at Bucknell, had 11 points, 5 assists, 1 turnover, played 39 minutes, fouled out diving for a loose ball. So now he's the starting point guard, but now next September comes around, Bill Rayner calls, he says, Chris, aren't you coming to tryouts? He says, tryouts? I'm the starting point guard. No, Chris, we have better players now. You have to come to tryouts again. He goes to tryouts, goes through the tryouts, same thing. You're the 12th man. You're never going to play. By the end of the season, they're in last place. He's the starting point guard. Now Bill Rayner gets fired because no matter where you coach, if you don't win, you get fired. And Ralph Willard is hired as the coach. Ralph Willard had been an assistant to Rick Pitino at Kentucky, assistant to Jim Boeheim at Syracuse, took Western Kentucky to the Sweet 16, big-time coach. So he comes in and he looks at his team in spring workouts and he says to his coaches, we got to get rid of this guy, Spittler. He said, well, coach, you know, we kind of like having him around. He's a good guy. No, he's got to go. He's got to go to tryouts. So he goes to tryouts again. Same thing. You're on the team. You're never going to play. And on senior night that year, there was one senior left from Chris Spittler's freshman class. It was Chris Spittler. And the coach at Lehigh, usually you guys have all seen senior nights, which, by the way, senior night was invented by Dean Smith in the 1960s. In fact, there were several occasions where he had 6 seniors, and he started them all and began the game by taking a technical foul because he wanted all his seniors to say they started their last home game. So it started with Dean Smith. And now, of course, you know, every senior in the building is given flowers on senior night. Oh, are you up there in the 15th row? Come on down. But it started with great intentions. And Sal Mentasana, who was the coach at Lehigh, usually the other team leaves the floor during the senior ceremony, brought his team out when Spittler was being honored because he wanted them to see what you could accomplish regardless of your talent level. That if you worked hard enough, if you cared enough, if you were willing to put everything you had into what you were doing, you could contribute. And Chris Spittler averaged 1.4 points per game for his college career, and he was a contributor. And when he graduated, he went to law school in New York. And I had written this book called The Last Amateurs that came out that fall. And Chris got an email from someone which said, Chris, we play basketball every Wednesday night, pick up ball at PS 87, which is where I went to elementary school, believe it or not. We're terrible, but from what I've read in this book, you'd fit right in with us. Would you like to come and play? And Spittler wrote back and said, I would love to as long as I don't have to try out. And he still plays pickup ball. He's a big-time lawyer now every weekend. And he loves the game. And he is living proof that you don't have to have God-given talent to contribute. And that's true in every walk of life. It's true of everyone in this room. All of us have the potential to do great things. Look to my right if you want examples of that. So that's my answer when people say, who's the athlete you admire the most? It's Chris Spittler. I want to also talk a little bit about Tom Watson and Bruce Edwards because they are the reason I'm here tonight. The first person I ever interviewed at a PGA Tour event was Bruce Edwards in 1981. I was sent by the Washington Post. The Kemper Open was being moved from Charlotte to Washington. And my boss sent me to the Memorial, which was the week before, with the very specific instructions to bring back some stories. So the first day I was there, I saw Bruce sitting on the putting green. I recognized him because Tom was the #1 player in the world at the time. Walked over, introduced myself, gave him the reporter's line, you got a few minutes. He said, sit down. 2.5 hours later, we were still talking. And he became a great friend and what we reporters call a go-to guy, somebody you go to because he's always going to give you good stuff. And in 2003, early 2003, I learned that Bruce had ALS. And that April at the Masters, he had already started to struggle to talk at that point. ALS affects you in different ways depending on who you are. Some people, Bruce was able to walk right till the end of his life, but he lost the ability to talk very early. But he could still be understood. And he said to me, I'd like you to write a book about my life, about being a caddy, my relationship with Tom, and what I'm going through now. I want to try to make more people aware of this disease. And my first answer was completely and utterly selfish, because I was working on a book at that point on Red Auerbach. And I started making excuses. Bruce, I'm in the middle of a book. I had promised my wife that I would try to take some time off in the summer to be with our kids more. And about 30 seconds into my answer, I found myself thinking, you've got to be kidding me. This is someone who's been your friend for 22 years, and he's asking you to do this? You can't say no. And I said, Bruce, we'll do it. And he said, I don't want to mess you up with your family. And I said, we'll do it. And I called my wife that day. And she had been on me for years at that point. You've got to take a summer off. You've got to spend more time with your children. And I told her what was going on. And I was waiting to hear someone else can write this, you know. And she said, you have to do this. You have to do this. She got it. And as it was extraordinarily painful because I watched a close friend die up close. Spent many, many, many hours with him. But it was the most extraordinary experience of my life because it was so inspiring. When Bruce was diagnosed, the day he was diagnosed at the Mayo Clinic with ALS, Tom sent him there. Tom Watson sent him there. Bruce, like most caddies, didn't have health insurance. So he had all these symptoms. You know, he would walk into a bar without having had a drink, try to order a drink, and the bartender wouldn't serve him because he thought he was drunk. And they couldn't figure out what was wrong. He couldn't go like this with his hand. So finally, Tom said, you go to the Mayo Clinic and tell them to send me the bill. And they ran all these tests, and they came in and they told Bruce he had ALS. And he had to call Tom and tell him. And when he gave him the news, of course, Tom started to cry. And as Tom was sitting there crying, he heard Bruce say, you know, it could have been worse. He said, Bruce, how could it possibly have been worse? He said, well, at least I got a disease named for a great athlete. It could have been Liberace's disease. Now think about that. He's just been given a death sentence, and he's making a joke. And he did that right to the end. He did every interview he was ever asked to do because he wanted people to know what was going on, even though it was physically painful for him to talk. 5 days before Bruce died, Duke played Connecticut in the Final Four in San Antonio. And Duke blew an 8-point lead in the last 3.5 minutes. I'm not at all bitter about it. And that night I got an email, and it was from Bruce. And it said, really sorry Duke choked. Not. Bruce is from Hartford, Connecticut. It was 5 days before he died. And he was one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met. And somebody said to me shortly after Bruce passed away, I was at a dinner much like this, and somebody said to me, you know what? ALS is contagious. Because if you're touched by it in any way, it never goes away. It never goes away. Because you know exactly what's involved, and you know how much work still has to be done. So I am still afflicted with ALS. And I hope all of you are afflicted with ALS in the sense that we have so much work to do. I will finish with this. I am in the room at Army with Jim Cantaloupe and Kevin Norman. Kevin Norman is sitting on his bed. Jim Cantaloupe is sitting at his desk. I'm sitting on Jim Cantaloupe's bed. And a guy walked in to do what's called morning room inspection. He had a clipboard. And he walked through the room and started taking notes. And I saw an immaculate room. And he walks out and he leaves the clipboard on the door. And I went over and I took the clipboard off the door. And I looked at it. And sure enough, it says, uniforms not spaced properly in Cadet Cantaloupe's closet. Too many civilian photos on Cadet Norman's desk. Unknown object on Cadet Cantaloupe's bed. And I thought, wow, I've come a long way from being a pimp and a whore to an unknown object. Isn't that progress? Thank you very much for allowing me to be here tonight. It was an honor. I'm amazed by the work Cassie and everybody else has done. Stuart, I'm amazed by you. You're an extraordinary young man. You were back then, you are now. And I'm proud to know you and see you again. And I just ask you all one thing. You've done an amazing work tonight. But when you walk out the door tonight, tell other people that they need to help, because we all need your help. Thank you so much.
John Feinstein, thank you very much. Outstanding. And I do have to say, I was born at Wright Pat Air Force Base because my dad was in the Air Force. He graduated from West Point in 1955. When we moved to Alabama, we were asked, who are you for, Auburn or Alabama? I got in 3 of the worst fights because I kept saying, I'm for Army. So I had to pick a team. Listen, tonight is a special night, and we're here to honor champions. And one of those I know personally, which I'll be talking more about in just a moment. They've dedicated themselves to fighting the battle against ALS. Now, Lou Gehrig, the Iron Horse of baseball, showed extraordinary commitment to the game of baseball. His spirit, his courage, even in the face of devastating diagnosis of the ALS disease. He still remains an inspiration, and to this day, we still look at him with how much courage he fought. The event tonight will forever secure the Spirit of Lou Gehrig Award, honorees as champions of ALS. This year's 2015 Spirit of Lou Gehrig Award honorees have demonstrated leadership in raising public awareness about Lou Gehrig's disease, improved the quality of life of persons with Lou Gehrig's disease by providing care, services, or fundraising, and actively promoted ALS education training among health professionals. Our first 2015 Spirit of Lou Gehrig Award honoree of the evening is Mr. Frank Orgel. Frank is known as a fighter. He worked his way onto the University of Georgia football team in the late 1950s, helping the Bulldogs win the SEC title in 1959. Now, as you know, winning an SEC title in the South is bigger than the Nobel Peace Prize. From there, he went on to play for the Washington Redskins and then served 2 years military service in the 101st Airborne Division, where he continued to play the game he loved. After serving his country, Frank resumed his football career playing with the Buffalo Bills, one of their highlights of their entire franchise. I kid, of course. But I will say he did have a serious injury there while playing with the Bills, and that ended his playing career. Coach Orgel began his coaching career at Thomasville High School and went on to replace the legendary coach Joe Summerall, where as head coach, he led the Warner Robins High School football team to its first of 23 titles. Now, Frank moved on to coach at the University of North Alabama, Clemson, and then South Carolina. Then alongside friend and former teammate Pat Dye, he worked as defensive coordinator, linebacker coach for 6 years at East Carolina, and then another 6 years with Dye, coaching the Auburn Tigers. Finally, Frank returned to the alma mater, the University of Georgia, or his alma mater, that is, as linebacker coach with head coach Ray Goff. ALS for Frank is atypical, primarily affecting just one side of his body. He has suffered with the disease for the past 15 years. True to his character as a fighter, he has not let ALS make him quit. Coach Orgel is an avid swimmer and states that this is not only benefiting him physically, but also helps keep his spirits up. And Frank Orgel, with his wife Sarah by his side, lives a fully engaged life, enjoying swimming and maintaining his interest in sports, particularly Auburn War Eagles sports, as he and his wife now live in Auburn, Alabama. Frank has a strong desire to help others living with ALS and is an ongoing resource to others living with this devastating disease. He has been extremely instrumental in raising significant funds for ALS research in search for a cure. And as winner on the field and in life, Frank Orgel is well deserving of receiving the 2015 Spirit of Lou Gehrig Award. I'd like to take just a few moments to show you a video that briefly shows the champion, the fighter, and the lover of life Frank truly is. Presenting the Spirit of Lou Gehrig Award is Frank Orgel's former college roommate and teammate, coaching peer, hunting buddy, so we hear, and most of all, dedicated friend throughout the years, Coach Pat Dye. While Coach Dye did play football at the University of Alabama along with Coach Orgel, his coaching career did include, yes, the University of Alabama as a linebackers coach, head coach at East Carolina, Wyoming, and of course, Auburn University. Coach Dye's overall head coaching record is 153, 62, and 5. Coach Dye was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame as coach in 2005. And while there's a break in the action, ladies and gentlemen, Coach Pat Dye.
Thank you very much. We got a malfunction on the lift. This is a special occasion for all of us. It's a special occasion for the ones' lives that have been affected by this horrible disease. And it's a special occasion for the ones that are here to help contribute and try to do something about it in the generations to come. All right. Thank you very much. Frank was my teammate, my roommate, a great high school coach that I learned a great deal from while I was coaching in college and he was coaching in high school. And when I got the head coaching job at East Carolina, I was coaching in Alabama and told Coach Brown I was going to coach through the Notre Dame game in 1973. I called Frank. He was at North Alabama. I said, Frank, go to Greenville, North Carolina, and go to work. Recruit and do whatever you got to do. I got the head coaching job, and we got to go up there and coach a football team. And when I got there, he had everything in order, and we got started, and we had a great run there for 6 years, and he was instrumental in it. And he was also instrumental in when we came to Auburn. He came as a defensive coordinator, and some of his players here, and I'm going to ask them to stand up in a minute, but any success that I've had as a head football coach, you know, there's so many people touch your life and with knowledge and attitude and just the kind of character and what they really are down inside. You know, I listened to the folks up here tonight, and you know, the greatness in a man is not in his physical talent and his physical ability. The greatness in a man is what he's got down inside him. You can't see it, but it's there, the heart, the passion, and that's what really separates also-rans and the champions. And of course, Kevin is here, and Ray, and I don't know how many other folks are here, but I do know Ray Moon and Kevin and of course Frank. And all of them had that stuff down inside of them that I'm talking about. Well, they probably wouldn't be here today to be a part of this program. Kevin Turner was a great football player at Alabama. Not that he had great statistics or anything, but you know, the average person watching a football game might not see what Kevin was doing. But I can tell you one thing, the people on the other side of the line of scrimmage knew what he was doing. And, and Ray Moon, I don't know a lot about Ray except as an official in the Southeastern Conference. And he is as good official as ever thrown a flag in the Southeastern Conference. And you always knew you were going to get a fair deal when Ray was on the field, and it's great to see him here tonight. Frank, I want, you've touched so many people's lives, and any success that we've enjoyed at Auburn since 1981, Frank Orgel played a big part in it. I can promise you, as a defensive coordinator when he came there, and us making a run to the conference championship in '83, and the success that we had after that, with his enthusiasm and recruiting and just the part that he played in our program has made me a better coach every day. And I know he's got, now this is kind of a three-pronged thing because we've got Alabama here, but we also got Georgia and Auburn. Now, I know I saw Randall Godfrey and Ray Goff and Dickie Clark, and how about the Georgia crowd standing up that are here tonight to be with Frank? Hal Bissell should have gone to Auburn, but he went to Georgia, was a great tailback at Georgia. And of course, Steve Dennis was coach on a team with, but I know Frank touched all of your lives. And I know that there's 3 linebackers here that Frank coached at Auburn. Would you please stand up? Greg Carr, Russ Carricker, and okay, who is that, Frank? Is that Jimmy Bone? No, it ain't Jimmy Bone. Not the guy I sent back from Orlando. Bless your heart. I'm glad to see you myself. You wouldn't have come up here for me, I know, but for Frank you would come. You know I love you, Jimmy. Oh, goodness. What fun. This award tonight is going to a great human being. And through all of the physical difficulties that he's had, and Sarah, bless her heart, and the family that has dealt with Frank's illness and the sacrifices that they've made and make on a daily basis, and all of his nurses and doctors and people that take care of him, bless you. But one thing about Frank Orgel that is true, and I don't know what he's going to say up here tonight. He might mess it all up, but he has not lost his sense of humor, and he has got a good one, so you're in for a treat. Thank you. Bless you, Frank, and I love you, buddy.
Thank you, Coach.
You need to hold that with your right hand. You can't hold both of them. You take that.
Okay.
I know you know how to handle a microphone.
Yeah, I can hold this. Thank you, Pat. Is Bobby and Jeanette still here? Where is Bobby? I want to thank those 2 ladies. They have those 2 ladies have really helped me in so many ways in organizing this event tonight, and I really appreciate everything the committee has done to make this such a big success for myself and Kevin. You know, all right, guys, crap, I don't really deserve my wife, Sarah, will you stand up? Oh, you can still stand. You know, she gets me up every morning. She helps me get dressed. She helps me transfer from my wheelchair to my lounge chair. She takes me to swimming. She takes me to watch football practice. She goes and picks up all my medicine. Regularly comes in there and just says, "Take this," and I don't know what it is, but I take it. She cooks all my meals, tells me what I need to eat and what I shouldn't eat. She puts me to bed at night and kisses me good night. I'd really like for Weston to come up here if he could. Would you? Love of my life, come on up here. Well, and his mama or Carrie won. Come up with mama. I want you to take this. You can come up here, Leanne, if he's a little. And I want you to pick this award up. Here he comes. Would you take that down to Grandma? I actually love Pat Dye. You know, when you go to college, I'd always heard you're going to make some friends that's going to last you a lifetime. With Pat, I believe it's lasts more than a lifetime. Like he said, we roomed together, we played together. He probably doesn't remember it, but in '59, the only game we lost to South Carolina, we were behind by 4, I believe, and we were going to onside kick it. And I was supposed to be the guy that gets on the ball, and our kicker was supposed to kick it 15 yards, and I'll get on it. And when it was kicked, I'll run down the field, and I keep running, I'm looking down just for the ball. And when I get about 15 yards, I see no ball, so I glanced up, and here comes a big tight end from South Carolina running full speed, and I'm running full speed, and we hit head on, and the only thing I remember is Pat saying, "Get your butt off the ground, get your butt off the ground." I was in la-la land, and I got up and went back to the huddle, and we had about 4 minutes left in the game. I played the rest of the game, and I can't tell you anything that happened. I don't remember anything. I didn't know who won or lost, and we were on the bus going home, and Coach Whitworth came and sat beside me, handed me $5, and which was a lot of money to me. And he said, "Frank, Coach Butts bet me $5 you wouldn't get up." I said, "I probably wouldn't have if Pat hadn't have got in my ear and hollered at me." But that ain't the only time he's hollered at me. You know, he hired me from, like he said, from North Alabama, and I learned a lot of football from him. When I got there, he and I went recruiting, and he had told me I was going to be the defensive coordinator. we were on a plane flying to Georgia, and my first college job, I'd been in college about 3 or 4 months coaching, and all I'd ever coached was high school. I was just an old high school coach, and Pat said, "You're going to be the defensive coordinator." And I said, we were riding on the plane, I said, "Coach, now, are you sure you want me to be the defensive coordinator? I've never coached at major college like this before." He said, "Yeah, if I didn't think you could do it, I wouldn't give it to you." And I said, "Well, I hope I can do it, and I'll try the best I can." He said, "Let me tell you something. I'll help you the first couple of years till you get it down, and I can help you make the game plan and work the defensive game plan." But he said, and this will always stick with me, told me 2 things. He said, "You coach your personality. Don't coach mine or anybody else's. And you get those players to play like you played." And that meant a lot to me. And we had a lot of success at East Carolina. And I learned, that's where I really learned how to coach football. I learned so much from him and all the other coaches at East Carolina. I learned from them. And when we were at Auburn, I continued to learn. All the coaches, I never worked for a coach I had learned something about. At Auburn with Larry Blakeney's here tonight. Larry coached wide receivers, but I learned a lot about football from Larry Blakeney. When Steve Dennis came to work for us, I learned a lot about football from Steve Dennis, and talking with Steve and how he liked to play things. Joe Whitt came to Auburn with us and coached outside backers, and I learned a lot of football from Joe Whitt. He was kind of like me at East Carolina. He just been an old high school coach, but he was a dang good college football coach. And Frank Cox is here, and he's equipment manager. Hell, I learned something from Frank. I didn't like for my linebackers to wear gloves. I thought they couldn't catch the ball with gloves on. Frank changed my mind. And Rusty Dean ran the dorm. I learned some things from Rusty Dean. I learned when my players was slipping out at night, not doing the right things in the dorm, and how we had to correct that. You see people you meet like that in your family, and everybody can teach you something. I was at South Carolina for 3 years, and it was a different kind of learning experience for me. And then I went to Georgia and worked for Ray Goff for 6, 7 years. I learned a lot of football from Ray Goff. Ray was a first-time head coach, and he had his own struggles being the head coach and learning how to do it. He was learning, and I was learning from him. And all the coaches, Dickie Clark's here tonight. Dickie was defensive end coach at Georgia, and he and I spent a lot of time together in that meeting room. And of course, Steve Dennis then came over to Georgia and continued our relationship at Georgia together. When I, in '96, when Ray resigned at Georgia, a fellow asked me next door, said, "Did you get fired?" I said, No, I didn't get fired. I resigned for health reasons. He said, "What was wrong with you?" I said, "The damn alumni was sick of me." I'm happy that I can be here tonight. I, I probably, I didn't know I had this disease. I knew something was wrong. I was tripping and I fell a lot. And I just thought, well, maybe I need to work out more. Maybe I'm losing some strength. And I was playing a lot of golf. And when I first got there, I could beat everybody. And I was getting to where I couldn't beat the children. And I told my wife I was going to quit going out there and making bogeys all day. And I decided to give it up. But I said, I got to find out, what's wrong with me. And she arranged for me to go to a lot of doctors. And it was probably my fault, but I would, well, that guy, he's not right. He don't know what he's talking about. I don't have that. I was diagnosed at Cleveland Clinic with PLS. And I asked him, well, that's better than Lou Gehrig, isn't it? He said, well, it's kind of like that. When we got home, I said, hey, that doctor's wrong. I got nerve damage or something. So we went to the Mayo Clinic, and I saw the Dr. Dick, who was supposed to be the guru of the peripheral nerve, and he put me through a week of tests, and he was about 85 then. I didn't know whether I'd trust him or not. He looked like he was dead and too lazy to fall over. But he told me I had motor neuron. And I said, well, that's better than having ALS, isn't it? He said, no, that's kind of the same thing. It just affects your motor parts. And finally, and Sarah she was kind of on me about, listen, you need to start accepting that you got a disease and you got to live with it. And I said, well, let's go one more place. So we decided to go to Duke. And we went to Duke, and the guy walked in the room and sat down on his stool and looked at me and said, you got ALS. I said, well, hold it a minute, Doc. And damn, I just got in here. I just sat in this chair. And you walk in the room, you ain't even hit me with a hammer. You hadn't told me to raise my arm up and see if you could pull it down. You didn't tell me to raise my leg up and see if you could push it down. You just came in and say, I got ALS. I said, I got to have a little more to go on than just you looking at me. So he said, well, we're going to send you over for a nerve conduction test and have them tell us. I said, Doc, I done been through more nerve conduction tests than you can shake a stick at. Everywhere I go, they want to check my nerves out. But I went because my wife said I was going. And we got back, and he came back in the room and said, you got ALS. I've checked everything on it, and you have ALS. Now, you need to accept the fact that you got ALS. So I went home and I had a long talk and thought about it, and I said, yeah, I got to accept the fact that I got it. And let me tell you, it is an awful disease to have. They first told me that, there's not any pain with ALS. I don't believe that. My back hurts every morning. My shoulder hurts. I guess I take pills to kind of buffer the pain, I guess, because it don't ever stop. But I learned to accept what I had, and I got to work out. And at first I was working in the weight room, and then 3 days a week, and then I was swimming, trying to swim 2 or 3 days a week, and I found out that I was falling more doing all that workout. And I said, well, I still got to do it. I've got to get stronger. I kept doing it, and I finally went back to my doctor, and he said, well, we need to cut out the weightlifting. It's something about the nerves from your good side are going over to your bad side and trying to help the bad side. And then he got to telling me the specifics of it. It was way over my head. But he said, let's quit weightlifting and just keep swimming. So I work in the swimming pool now 3 days a week. And I can tell you from my experience, it's devastating. You know, I'm fighting a battle, and I'm fighting it hard. But you know, I know I ain't gonna win, but we'll still fight. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your fighting. Thank you for your fight, Coach. Coach Frank Orgel. All right. You know, whenever you try to do something on your phone to keep up with your script, the key is not to close it out. How many of you are from Birmingham here? All right. How many of you see me on TV? All right. How many of you thought I would be taller? So did I. Trust me. But am I the only man here wearing makeup? I want to make sure. Real quick, grab the red bracelet in front of your plate. Let's all put that on, and at one time, if we can, at all of us in solidarity, hold up that red wrist, just to let everybody know and remind all of us why we're here and what we're being a part of. And certainly, please keep your programs. These are going to be historical because this is where we start to fight this disease and make a difference in so many other people's lives, because I can tell you it's people like Coach Orgel as well as Kevin Turner that have made a huge difference in so many other people's lives, and I can't tell you how much that means to all of us. And real quick, I mean, this is a treat for me. We have Coach Stallings, we have Coach Dye, we have Coach Blakeney, who coached at my alma mater, Troy, which Troy State at the time. How about some Trojans in here? He doesn't remember when I quarterbacked for him, because I never did, but in my mind, I was amazing. But no, it's a real treat to have everybody here. And a friend of mine I grew up with, Chip Powell, played for Auburn, and he and I were on a hunting trip one time, and I was talking to him, and I said, man, let me tell you something. One of my favorite quarterbacks to ever play at Auburn was Randy Owen. And, of course, I'm not thinking straight because we get up at 4 in the morning. He goes, what do you mean? I said, no, I loved Randy Owen. The guy could run a wishbone like nobody's business. He was amazing. And he kept going, who are you talking about? I said, Randy Owen. And he goes, of like the country music group Alabama? And I said, no. He goes, you mean Randy Campbell? And I went, oh, yeah, that's him. And I got to meet him tonight. So, Randy, it was a treat to meet you, and you were amazing on the football field as well, and great job. Thank you for being here tonight, and to all of you for being here tonight. Listen, I'm going to take just a second because this is where I want to take a little bit of liberty because this next gentleman I grew up with, and I mean, I could talk all night about him, but a lot of times we say things about people that we write down on scripts and all, but I'm going to be honest with you. I grew up with this man, playing football with him through high school. I was the kicker, okay? You know, I didn't wash my jersey but like every 3 weeks. And the kickers always got to hold the hand dummy for the stars. And this fullback, Kevin Turner, used to come just plow through me. And I was always telling him, dude, I'm going to rough you up if you do that again. And he's like, that's all right, and picking me back up. But he was a guy that, on our team, every person on that football team, every person who were, whether it was with equipment or coaches or people who just were a part of it and didn't get to do much, was treated equally. And growing up in Prattville, Alabama, Kevin Turner, to all of us, was Superman. And then when he chose to go to the University of Alabama, I cried. Because I kept saying, man, you got to go to Auburn. I mean, that's my team that I was pulling for at the time after getting beat up so many times. But I couldn't have been more proud for him. And there was a statement made by one of the greatest coaches to ever coach the game, along with Coach Dye, was Coach Stallings. He said, Kevin Turner physically reminds me of Superman. And when I saw that, I was like, wow. Because all of our lives, everything, any competition we had, Kevin could beat you at it. But he was one of those guys that he would beat you and then turn around and go, come on, man, you can do better. Come on, step it up. I've got your back. Come on. That's the kind of character he has. And I'll tell you today, and from here on out, I've met a lot of great people, but there's only one Superman in my life, and that is Kevin Turner. Now, he may be uglier than me. Okay, maybe not. I'll give him that one. But I love this man. He's one of the best friends that I've had growing up all my life. And he's always been there, always smiled, always positive. And there are a lot of people in here that I could go through that I know have been a part of helping Kevin through this. Craig and his family and so many others. And Tamara with the foundation, the Kevin Turner Foundation. It's just... it's great to have all of you here. So I would like to bring up, well, we all know him. He's one of the legends in here as well. To present the award to my dear friend, the man I love as a brother, Kevin Turner, Coach Gene Stallings, ladies and gentlemen.
What a joy it is to be here for just a little while and present the Spirit of Lou Gehrig Award to my friend Kevin Turner. So is Kevin going to come up here right now?
We're going to run a video real quick, and that is my fault. I stepped ahead here, so if we can go ahead and roll that video while we get Kevin up here.
What a joy this is. First of all, to see Kevin walk up here. Now that's, for you people don't realize, that's a great accomplishment. And congratulations to Frank and Ray Moon. You know, we talk about these officials. I never was one of the favorite for the officials, but I was coaching the Phoenix Cardinals, and we were playing the 49ers, and I thought it was a terribly officiated game. I just could not keep from hollering at the official. So I called him over, and I said, you know, I've been coaching for a long time. I believe this is the worst officiated game I have ever seen. He said, you know, it probably is, but even at that, it's better than the coaching. I said, you go over and do your job, and I'll do mine. What a great job it is, what a great privilege it is to say a few words about Kevin Turner. Kevin was a sophomore when I went to Alabama. I will assure you that he was Hollywood handsome. He didn't know it. I mean, that's the thing that stands out to me about Kevin. He was a big, fine, physical, strong-looking, handsome man, and he didn't know it. My girls they were in love with Kevin Turner. Every time he would come off the plane, we'd do something. They would just sort of swoon. Kevin was kind to my little boy, John Mark, who was born with Down syndrome. My complaining days are over. I've said this on a number of occasions. Little Johnny couldn't breathe a lick. The oxygen saturation was 62. I said, Johnny, how do you feel? He said, I'm fine. Didn't complain at all. Every time I've talked with Kevin, on various occasions, he never complained at all. Now, you're looking at a man that was literally an All-American in my books. In college football, he was a fullback back when we used to ask the fullbacks to block. He was a man's man. He was a player's player. He went ahead and played professional football for 9 years. A lot of people draw the salary of a professional. There are not many pros. A pro is a guy that can perform at the highest level. I'll assure you that Kevin Turner was a pro. Played for a number of years, and then he developed this Lou Gehrig's disease. Most of us don't even know anything about it. I did a little research on it and found out that if you want to have something, that's something you don't want to have. It affects your body, and yet your mind is still good, and yet eventually you lose your ability to speak, and things just sort of fade away. And man has every opportunity in the world to complain just a little bit. Kevin Turner never complained. He's done the best he could with what he has. His mother and daddy has done a beautiful job and has been taking care of him and his children, and the lady that takes care of him. I just can't say enough good things for you, hon, for the way that you have made him happy and for him to walk up on this podium. And we're looking at a man with Lou Gehrig's disease to receive the award, the Spirit of Lou Gehrig. Lou Gehrig would be proud to have Kevin Turner be the recipient of this particular award. We're looking at a man that's full of integrity. He played football to the fullest. He never asked any quarters. I can remember when I first went there, and we didn't know the players and had them write their name with a cross here on a piece of tape, and I'd see Turner, and it wasn't long before I knew who he was. A football player, captain of the team, leader. Everybody wanted to be a Kevin Turner. And what a joy it is to know that the people, you people in the audience, that are raising money to make their quality of life just a little bit better. I'm coaching for the Dallas Cowboys. We had 12 rookies to make our football team. That's unheard of in that particular time, but had 12 rookies make our team, and we're trying to come up with a goal for the Dallas Cowboys the year that we had all those rookies make our team. After sitting around the table for 2 or 3 days, this is what it was. For everybody to have a genuine appreciation for the contribution that everybody made. We said when the year is over, the offense appreciates the defense, and defense out for prayer of the coach, player, just a genuine appreciation. Last game we lost that year was in the Super Bowl. It's just something about having a genuine appreciation. I have a genuine appreciation for Craig. Here's his friend, spends hours every day saying that his quality of life is as good as it can be. I only know one other person. I had a friend named Joe Ritson in a terrible accident. He had a friend that came by his house 9 times a day for 9.5 months, teaching him to walk. That was a friend. Craig has been a friend. If you're in a bind and you want somebody to be your friend, you want somebody like Craig. Sort of reminds me of that poem about friendships. When things don't come out right, he comes right in. When none of your dreams come true, he is. Never looks for your money, except when you've lost it. Never insists on seeing you, except when nobody else wants to. Nothing is more important to him than making you look important. That's a friend. Craig has been a friend to Kevin Turner. Not too long ago, I received a letter from a lady that had a severely handicapped child, both mentally and physically. In the letter, she was writing about the joys of that child, and then she talked a little bit about the struggles. That's the way she closed her letter. Life is not about waiting until the storm passes by. It's learning how to dance in the rain. Kevin Turner has taught a lot of us how to dance in the rain. And in closing, I love the poem, The Dash. I read where a man stood to speak at the funeral of a friend, made mention of the tombstone, the dates from the beginning to the end. At first, he mentioned the date of the birth. The latter he mentioned with tears. Said what matters most of all is that dash between the years, because it represents all the time that he was alive upon this earth. And only those who knew him best knew what that dash was worth. Matters not how much you own, your house, your cars, your cash. What matters most of all, the way you live that dash. If you could just slow down a bit and see what's true and real, try to understand how the other fellow feels. More often wear a smile, because your little dash may only last a while. And as your eulogy is being read and your life is being rehashed, are you going to be proud to hear the people say, the way you lived your dash? Kevin Turner lived his dash. He has taught lots of us how to dance in the rain. And what a joy it is for me to be able to present my friend Kevin Turner with the Spirit of Lou Gehrig Award tonight.
And now, Craig Sanderson, man I taught to catch footballs. No, I'm kidding. Here you go.
Over these last few years, I've come to help Kevin with his voice, and I've had some wonderful opportunities to be able to speak for Kevin. And it's a great thing when you get to tell your friends publicly, what they really mean to you. Although it can be difficult at times, and Kevin taught me just to tell everybody that it's allergies. So if my allergies flare up a little bit tonight, y'all forgive me. But he wanted me to make sure that I thank you guys from the bottom of his heart. Things like this are, as you guys can understand, overwhelming. And so when you see the love that is poured out, and when people actually come to an event honoring you, and they give their own hard-earned money for the cause, overwhelming is kind of a small word for it. And so I just want to make sure that I thank the right people. Thank the ALS Association, Bobby and Janet, just to give you some. So I sat down and met with Bobby and Janet when they started talking about this event, and they wanted to include the foundation. And so Tamara Allen, our executive director, called and asked me if I would meet, and absolutely. So I sat down. They're just wonderful people. And to see their dedication to a cause is special. I mean, it's truly special. And to see it in action, I've seen the ALS Association of Alabama work, because I've seen them deliver a wheelchair to Kevin. We called Janet and said, hey, we need a wheelchair. A couple days later, we had a wheelchair. I mean, it's just, that doesn't happen for free. So when they ask you for money, that's what it's for. It goes to help people with this horrible disease. Like I said, I want to just talk about how proud I am and the people sitting at these tables are of Kevin. You know, we watched him in 2010. We thought he had a neck issue because his left shoulder was smaller than his right. So he goes to the doctor, and you saw in the video, he went to one doctor, and they diagnosed him with ALS, and they said, well, it's 12 to 15 years life expectancy. Goes to the next doctor, and it's 5 to 7. Goes to another doctor, and it's 2 to 3. He came to me and finally said, man, please stop taking me to the doctor. That's the next one I go to. I may not make it out of the office. But to watch what he did, I mean, we immediately started the Kevin Turner Foundation. We sat in a lawyer's office in Birmingham, and the video you saw was a video called Journey On, and Ty Herndon is a country singer. Decided that song really fit Kevin and his journey, and it really does. And so from that, I know in your program there's a page about Kevin, and I encourage everybody to read that, because it's, you know, it talks about some of the wonderful things he's done. One caption in there that talks about how much money we've raised is a little bit wrong. We've raised almost $1 million. So a little bit over that $500,000 it says. But all that money's gone to raising awareness for this horrible disease. It's gone to research for ALS. And then also our mission past that is head trauma in sports. So, you know, football and kind of what's going on with the NFL and college as far as concussions and what head trauma does to you. You know, the name of this thing is Changing the Game. And Kevin Turner has changed the game. I mean, when you look at where we're at today on awareness of concussions and what repetitive head trauma does to an athlete, think about where we are today compared to 2010 when Kevin was diagnosed. We are light years. The NFL has changed their policy on how they treat their players. And Kevin Turner can take credit for a tremendous amount of that, because he got this horrible diagnosis and got out in front of everybody for the world to see and said, hey, pay attention. This is what can happen if you don't pay attention. So he's changed the game, and Kevin, I'm proud of you. I mean, I'm just proud of you. But I want to tell one really quick story about Coach Stallings. When I was a senior, I tore my knee up and didn't get to play my senior year. And so, funny as it may sound, Coach Stallings kind of became my therapist because I obviously was devastated. So I would go to Coach Stallings' office about once a week, and we didn't talk much about football, but we talked about everything else. And I remember one conversation, we were talking about what I was going to do after college. And so we started talking about Coach Stallings and his path and kind of, what's happened to him. And in that conversation, he said, Craig, you're special. He said, I know that because I'm special. And that's why I've been able to do this, and this. That's why I've ended up where I'm at. And so I was sitting here tonight and wasn't 100% sure what I was going to talk about. And then I see Coach get up here, and I see his family and knowing how they take care of him. And then I see Kevin's parents, and I see Allison, and I see all the people it takes to take care of people that have this horrible disease. And guess what? We're all special. It takes special people to deal with what, and because, Stuart, you're right when you say it's a family. It's everybody. It's everybody involved. And I just want to say, too, you're a special young man. To see you get up here, and it's been so long, and here you are, you're still fighting the fight. And so, just like Coach Stallings says, you're special. And so I look at Kevin's kids, Nolan, Natalie, and Cole. He wanted me to make sure that I let you guys know, y'all are the reason he gets up every morning. Y'all are the reason he keeps fighting this fight. And just like Coach says, are we going to win? We don't know. Not many people beat this. Nobody beats this. But we're going to keep fighting. And I know Kevin Turner's going to keep fighting. But I'm not nearly as good a speaker as Coach Stallings, and I've watched him. He recites poems every time he speaks, and he's wonderful at it. But there is a line, and my favorite poem is a poem called If by Rudyard Kipling, and I've got a personal reason for that. But when Kevin was diagnosed, I read that poem over and over. And there's a line in the poem that says, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, when there is nothing left except the will which says, hold on. And so I watch Kevin every day, and man, he's got that will that says, hold on. And so that's what keeps him fighting. So anyway, again, I just want to thank everybody for Kevin. Thank you for listening to me. Again, Kevin just wanted to make sure that he thanks his parents, his kids, and Allison for just the wonderful care that they give him. And really thank you, Coach Stallings, for dropping what you were doing and coming to be with us tonight. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Craig. And again, I smell money. It's out there. Okay? We've got a couple of auctions that are, I'm going to show you here in just a second, which are really something that I think not only is really cool, but it's something that's very important to help keep the foundation going and the association. And it's, as Craig mentioned, it's the money that you will be contributing in these auctions, as well as being here tonight, that will make a difference. And if we could, I believe we have that PowerPoint, so we're going to start out with the first item that we'd like to auction off. Now, I'm not much of an auctioneer, but I will tell you this, ladies, if you are a Matt Damon fan, do we have any Matt Damon fans in here? Ladies? All right. For $7,500, you will have the opportunity to go to the screening, watch the movie with Matt Damon in the theater. This is all serious. And then have an exclusive party afterwards with Matt Damon when the movie Born 5 is released. Again, it's only $7,500 starting point. And I can't see out there much, but if you are interested in hanging out with Matt Damon, let the auction begin. If you would, you're going to have to be real loud and obvious. Anyone? Come on, guys, this is Matt Damon. Anyone? Should we pick a better movie? No, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. For $7,500, this will be your contribution and also your opportunity to be able to go to LA and hang out with some of the stars, and keep in mind that everything is paid for once you get out there, and that is your opportunity. Anyone? Coach Blakeney apparently wanting 2 of them. Yeah. Anyone? Anyone? Born 5. All right, should we rotate? Let's go ahead and go through. We'll try our next item. How about the Iron Bowl experience? This, I'm sure we can get some love for. Now, what I want to point out here is, if you are a part of this and you are the winning bidder, you will have the choice to either A, have A.J. McCarron throw you a football, a pass. It'll all be videoed. It'll all be legit. He will be in uniform, and you will be receiving the pass. It could be you. It could be your child. It could be a family member, anyone. Or if you're an Auburn fan and you would like to punt to Chris Davis, you can do so in 2016. Same scenario. He will be receiving the punt that you kick. And obviously, an opportunity for all of you who would be interested to be able to have something for a little keepsake. And of course, they'll also be signing the football for you, and you will have the opportunity to spend time with these 2 young men. So let's begin with $7,500. Is that a good spot? Anyone? We've got to have Auburn and Alabama fans in here somewhere. All right, I've just been reminded that the silent auction is until 10:30. That's 20 more minutes. So this is your opportunity to go out, check your bid after you spend $7,500 to have A.J. McCarron throw you a pass. 1,500. All right, it's down to 1,500. Anyone? 1,500 bucks. Maybe you've got a niece, a nephew, a grandson, a daughter, son. I mean, this is an opportunity, and for 1,500 bucks, you would get a chance to have A.J. McCarron throw you a pass, or for those of you great punters out there, punt a ball to Chris Davis. Anyone? I still can't see out there in the back. All right. Shall we roll on? Any more? All right. That was the opportunity, and also, this is what $7,500. I'm getting my money straight now. For those of you who would like to go see the Jimmy Fallon Show live, this is an opportunity for $7,500. You'll get to not only meet him, go through the guest door, and also it'll be an opportunity to spend a couple of nights in LA. So anyone out there interested in bidding on this for $7,500, you could go meet Jimmy Fallon and be a part of one of his late night shows. And of course, The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon.